Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the All In Podcast. I'm your host, David Morse, CEO, team leader of Keller Williams Arizona Realty in Scottsdale and Phoenix, with my co-host, Joe Quattrucci, the director of growth for the Kristen Cole Real Estate Network and the CEO of PCX. Joe, we have a friend, a legend in his own right, someone who has been instrumental in our business, our development, and a friend on the podcast today, Denny Grimes. Denny, how's it going, man?
Awesome. Good to be with you guys.
Hey, we appreciate you being here, Denny. Give our listeners kind of a high-level overview of who you are and what you do in real estate.
Well, I'm a real estate agent, obviously, in Southwest Florida. I've been doing it. I've been in sales here 37 years. So, after you cross 37, I just say almost 40 because it sounds a whole lot better. I've been doing this longer than George Strait has been singing. And all in the same spot. I've been doing residential real estate, and I love it. I have what Keller Williams calls the 7th level team, which means that I have people that are doing it, and I'm helping lead that. And I have an awesome hub, and I'm kind of a believer in the MREA and Keller and everything that they stand for. So it's kind of really revolutionized my business. So again, I got a lot of time in this, and was selling homes. My first database was a shoebox.
Oh, perfect. Well, we'll get into that a little bit because I want you to take us back 37 years ago. And you know that we like to joke around with you. So Joe and I were -7. So take us back to
right.
-7 years old. When you're first getting into the industry, like what prompted you to get into real estate? Why real estate among everything else? You're a talented individual. You could have done a lot of different things. Why real estate?
Well, it's really kind of a cool story. And when you guys hear this, just hang on because it has a double meaning. All right. So I was growing up here in Southwest Florida, decided to get a business degree, a double major in marketing management with a wild idea. My father-in-law, future father-in-law, was in a construction business. I was going to take all those whiz-bang ideas and I was going to build him into the next Trammell Crow, right? And I don't know if anyone's ever worked with their family. However, it's kind of like, the young whippersnapper comes in with spit and vinegar and somebody else doesn't really want to have it grow at the same speed. We kind of parted. We certainly have a great relationship. It just didn't work. All right. And then I next targeted my dad. He had a landscape nursery business. I was going to make this go into some sort of like major business. It didn't work. So I was pretty frustrated. It wasn't making a lot of money. And then the Lord intervened. Let me tell you this story. Family friend of my future father-in-law was named Jack Lord. Jack Lord had another job in Tampa, which is about 120 miles north of me. Came down on a family visit, and we're just, I just got to meet them talking, and this is the way life goes. It's like you never know what'll happen. He talks about how much money he was going to make. He listed this piece of property, and when it sold, he was going to make this pile of money. I don't remember what it was. I just kind of looked at him and said, "You seriously can make that kind of money selling real estate?" I was a double major. I didn't even know you could make money in real estate, right? There's probably no such thing in the school I went to as a real estate degree. And I thought, you know what? I may think about that. And literally the following week, I signed up for the real estate school and have never looked back. And the thing that intrigues me most about real estate is that there's no ceiling, none. And Gary Keller has proven that. Many agents that we all know have awesome businesses. And I don't think I ever would take a job back then for $100,000 guaranteed or $1 million guaranteed. I like me setting my own boundaries.
That's really cool. So the Lord intervenes, and you get into real estate. What were those early years like? Because a lot of our listeners are, in their first several years in real estate, and they may be seeing huge success. They may be kind of floundering. What were your first years like, and what were the biggest lessons that you learned?
Well, I remember that I finally sold a house, and you got to go back 30 years ago. You could probably pay cash for a home if you went to an ATM. If they had ATMs back then, they didn't, right? And so I think the very first year, the big deal was to be a member of the $1 Million Club. And back then you probably had to sell 20 houses to do it. My first year in real estate, I made $968,000 in sales. My biggest sale, and this was like a lot of money, it was a $200,000 home in a place called The Forest. And I think my commission was like $250,000. And I think I had like $3,000 or something is the biggest check I'd ever seen in my life, right? Get this. I always thought, well, I built my business. We'll fast forward a little bit on having a great customer service program. We'll get to that in a minute. So I decided my wife and I think we were married back newlywed. So we took them to this really expensive restaurant back then. It probably cost me $200. Get ready to pay the check. I didn't bring my wallet. So my first customer, they bought a $200,000 house. They had to pay for dinner.
That's a perfect service experience.
Which inspired a great customer service.
And we laugh about it till today. So anyway, yeah. So I did a lot of, there was not a lot of talk back then about lead generation. I mean, we were laughing about the shoebox. Yeah, what I did right was this. I was hungry to learn. And I would invest a lot of my time, and I didn't have a big budget and I didn't have a big income. And I realized, and I just became rabid at learning. Now, again, throughout my years, we've all seen people like this. They love to be involved in education. They just don't do anything with it. I seriously started investing money in education. I would go and hear top speakers like Zig Ziglar, Tommy Hopkins. In fact, you talk about me being a coach, a trainer. In my first year of real estate, I went and saw Tommy Hopkins speak, and it cost me a couple $100. Again, that's a lot of money. I sat there in the first row, almost like I was like a groupie at a Britney Spears concert, right? Thinking, man, this guy's awesome.
Tommy is awesome. Yeah. We had him on the show a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yes. And I said, and that's when actually I was 26, 27 years old. And I was 26 when I got into real estate. And I said, I want to do that. And I said, Tommy, no, I walked up to him and said, Mr. Hopkins, after the seminar, I said, I want to do what you're doing. What do I need to do? And so I guess back then, I never really thought about it. I was going to these classes and I was asking questions. So if you're new, get educated and start asking questions, right? That's what I teach nowadays, asking questions. So he was nice enough to take some 26-year-old guy or 27-year-old guy with a mullet and say, okay, let's have a cup of coffee. And he talked to me, and I still have the letter. Next time I come out to Phoenix, I'll bring it. He wrote me a handwritten note on American Airlines stationery. Back then they had stationery in first class. Well, thanks so much for talking to me, blah, blah, blah. I bought all his books. I bought his tapes everywhere. My car didn't even have a tape player. I bought one of those guys. It wasn't 8-track, right? It was cassette. I got a portable cassette player and I'd put it right between the seats, and I would listen over and over and over again. So I didn't even know what scripts were. However, I just knew that I was hungry to learn, and I studied and I applied.
Denny, do you think that's one of the challenges that agents have today, is that they're not spending enough time working to learn, and they're not spending enough time developing themselves in their profession, and they're just too focused on the next commission check?
I think there's a lot of that. And here, what the other thing is, and you're an awesome team leader, and you're both, you're in touch with a lot of different agents. I watch some of the market centers, even the ones that I see, and I think team leaders mean well. I think the other issue is this, you guys. Leadership, team leaders throw so much education in the calendar. It's like being on a cruise ship that serves food 24/7. At some point in time, you're not even interested in food anymore. And so people have seen all this stuff. They either get numb to it, or they don't drill deep enough into any one or two things to actually know how to do it. Yeah.
I get that, and I think I put myself on the spot here. Like, we're guilty of that here sometimes in Scottsdale and Phoenix. And I hear the analogy sometimes of, the brain is a sponge, and if you don't give it the opportunity to be wrung out, that would be the action component, right? Then there is a point where you get so saturated and you can only stay in that saturation mode. And I do think that with so much information coming people's way, especially in this year that the year or so we've endured, that a lot of people have hit that saturation point and they haven't wrung the sponge out.
Right. Totally right. And there's this new social app called Clubhouse. I don't know. It's kind of the biggest thing now. People are joining and I'm on it and I'm attempting to get kind of a script thing going in that. However, what I'm noticing, and this is a Danger Will Robinson thing, is that agents are starting to gravitate to all these Clubhouse things and they're listening to all this stuff and they think they're actually helping themselves when really they're just pouring water over a wet sponge, to use your analogy.
Yeah,
they're
definitely.
in real estate, but not doing real estate.
Definitely. Yep. I would agree. So early on, you talk about asking questions. Okay. So you're learning and you pick up on this idea of asking questions. Now, I consider you, Denny, a listing master. And I think a lot of that you'd probably ascribe to your ability to ask good questions. What do most agents miss when asking questions?
Well, that's a good question. Okay, so what I've discovered, and probably since COVID, and then we're not on the bold run anymore. Here's my aha, probably in the last 8 months. They don't listen. That's why the program that I'm beginning to help people understand is what I call question-based, which is not new. There's a lot of books written about question-based selling. However, I think it's the next component, you guys. It's listening enhanced conversational scripts. I'm shocked, and I don't want to put one generation, your generation. I had your hair when I started too, so just watch, okay? It's amazing how many people don't listen. And I think that's what's missing, because basically, if you guys are having this, super party at the market center and someone called you and said, look, I'm looking for the market center and I'm a little bit turned around. Can you help me? What would instinctively be your response?
Well, where are you?
There you go.
Where are you coming from?
Question.
Yep.
And so when people probably, and they have to go through this part, is that they have all these scripts kind of rolling around like Bible verses. They just don't know where to put them. And when somebody, when they have the opportunity, they're attempting to put a script, they're attempting to give directions to go to the metaphor we're just talking about without first asking the question, where are you? Let me help you get there. And it doesn't work that way. One has to develop and understand where the customer is. And what's interesting is that if you both moved to Scottsdale not long ago, so if you were there a week or a month, you were kind of new in the area, and I was attempting to get directions, let's say to your house, maybe within a mile you could give directions. Now that you've lived there a year or so, I can maybe from the airport, maybe from Tucson. The longer you're exposed to real estate, I can help anyone, a potential buyer or a potential seller. If they're in London, figuratively speaking, I know the questions to ask to get them to where I think they should be. And the key is asking the question and listening. Keller Williams, the language of sales, they have a great class out there, right? And what they're talking about is, the mirroring and matching, which is awesome. However, listening is, I think, a lost art. And when you listen to the people respond, your buyers and sellers, they will give you clues. They will drop breadcrumbs. And what I instruct my people to do that are attempting to master this is start writing down the words they're using. Yeah, mirroring and matching is really cool and important. However, when they use a word, you use that same word, because now you're getting the gears kind of in line with each other. So a long answer to say, I think probably listening is something that I think people take for granted.
Well, I want to workshop this a little bit. How do you become a better listener? You just said, start writing down what people are saying. I mean, what other things can agents do to become better listeners?
Well, if they already know what they're going, if they already basically have a comfort level with their conversational scripts, meaning I'm not worried about what I'm going to say next. They have more of their brain power focused on exactly what you're saying. So if you are attempting to get to my house for a party and I ask, where are you? And you say, well, not really sure I am. I just see a Cracker Barrel over here and there's a Burger King right next door. If I'm already worried about giving you directions from somewhere I don't even know where you are, then I miss what you said. Oh, I know where you are. You're Cracker Barrel. Wait, just keep going about 3 more miles and I'm on the right-hand side. So you have to have a comfort level with what you say. And that comes from, I believe, what Gary says, the top 5 things we should be doing, the 20%. One of those is script practice and role play on a daily basis. And I think that's the Maytag repairman of the top 5 things, because everybody wants to like have a listing and go on appointments if they won't practice. And everywhere you go to a concert. What are they doing out there? They're warming up. They're getting their guitars tuned. You go to a ball game. They're out there shooting free throw. Hockey. I mean, professionals never quit practicing.
Yeah, and right on that note, Denny, you have the Facebook group Denny Delivers, and you do a standing weekly live scripts call. And correct me if I'm wrong, but any agent is welcome to join that call, ask questions, and engage with you in scripts. What prompted you to decide to start doing a recurring weekly free script call for any real estate agent who wants a little bit of help?
Well, when they went to May Bold, that was the first Bold they had, not in person. They had 40,000 or so people signed up for it. And so only X number of coaches could actually be on the presentation side. Well, being a Bold coach, there were a lot of us then were in the chat. And then they had the next online they had in the summer, then October Bold. I started watching when the Bold coaches were doing a role play, the chat just lit up. I mean, I just saw for the first hand how important and how impactful an agent watching a role play versus just, they loved it. And I thought, well, how can we leverage that? So I started going down that path thinking, and I already had a passion for it. I didn't have the confidence yet of doing it. And I just had to suck it up and throw it out there. And so it's been growing. It was twice a week. Now I'm doing it once a week, every Tuesday, 1 to 2 o'clock. Your listeners want to come, it's free. They go to Denny Grimes Mastermind on Facebook. They can see some of my stuff, and got a YouTube channel, Denny Grimes Mastery. I think that's what it is. And my purpose is to teach mastery. Probably the 2 favorite words in the dictionary for me would be integrity and mastery.
Yeah. So I want to go back into your story a little bit. So you're growing this business, you're becoming a better listener, you're asking great questions, and you are doing it all in one location there in Florida. Bring us into fast forward, maybe 10, 15 years, because you grow this business into what's now a 7th level business. And if people aren't familiar with Keller Williams lingo, like you said, that type of business is a business in which you're able to step out, focus on something else, and the component parts of the business still operate. So you're really functioning, if you will, as a board of directors to your business that's being run by a CEO, right? How did you get to that point? How were you able to scale?
Well, that's all. I mean, there's a roadmap in what Gary wrote in A Millionaire Real Estate Agent, right? And then, of course, John Maxwell teaches that it's the people you hang around. Well, then I started dating someone we know, and, Kristen Cole, and, she's involved in expansion, and started hanging around more people that Ben Kennedys of the world, et cetera, that have these bigger businesses. And so you're watching them do it. You start to think bigger. And the interesting thing, although my sales aren't near, I've had better years. I've had, my team in one location. And of course, it was the international market. We were selling in 2005 about 450 homes a year, a little over 140 million. And then, of course, the market crashed then. And so it was a long road back. However, for the last several years, we've been selling about 250, 260 homes a year. And the interesting thing is that I was able to step out and grow my business. Now we're going to 350 this year. That's our goal. And the aha for me was that sometimes when we get out of the way, if you have a business, when you get other people in there to leverage the right people, your business can actually grow. And I've witnessed that. And that has allowed me to follow my passion, which is coaching, teaching, instructing, which is what I wanted to do. Back to the story of Tommy Hopkins.
And I think that's so instructive. When you get out of the way, your business oftentimes grows beyond what you ever could have thought possible. And I think we all agree on this call that one of the things that mega agents specifically struggle with is letting go of pieces of their business, letting go of the control that they have over their business so that you can put the right talent in place to grow it to the next level. And that's what you've experienced. So now you're training, you're coaching, you're speaking. This is how we all know each other in the first place, right? What is, as you look into the future, into 2021 and beyond, what do you think, besides just listening, or maybe it does go back to listening, what are the other things that agents need to master in order to become the go-to expert in their market?
Well, I think real estate's a lot like golf. Regulations say you can carry 14 clubs in your bag. Now, when you really ask a professional golfer, they can hit them all. However, there's probably a couple clubs there they have to master. One of them for most is a putter, because putting's important. So I would equate real estate to many different levers. That's how it's generally said. Not many people call it clubs. And putting is one of them. And that putting is some sort of lead generation. You see, real estate, everybody loves the freedom in real estate, yet the freedom in real estate causes people to fail. And you've heard me say this because you guys were in my bold room at one time. I've come to the realization, I had the thought, maybe teaching bold one time, I had this thought that no one really enters real estate and to get this, Joe, this is right up your alley, a holding pattern, being an air traffic controller, to wait for the assistant manager job at Target to open. I haven't met anyone that didn't want to get into real estate and make it their career for life. I mean, was that fair?
Yeah. Definitely.
Because there's so much opportunity and there is freedom if you basically can harness the freedom. And so here's what I've come to believe. It's impossible to fail at real estate. You can only quit. And what causes people to quit is they can't go through what they perceive as rejection long enough to see some production. They equate being in real estate, I'll use the flying analogy, not because of Joe. Joe knows I'm a pilot too, is for a real estate career, in my opinion, the length of the runway is like flying. The length of the runway is irrelevant if you don't get to speed. Airplanes need a runway and they need ground speed. A real estate agent to sustain himself or herself in real estate needs the runway, all right? And you can be in real estate 10 years and never take off. You just go down the runway like this, right? They need the speed to get the altitude to sustain themselves. And the discipline is you need to have at least one successful lead generation lever to do that. Because unless you're the Waltons on steroids, you don't have enough friends and family to just, they'll do business with you in spite of your incompetence. You've got to go outside your DNA at some point in time, and you have to do some lead generation. Open houses, expired, for sale by owners. And so agents make the mistake of thinking they have to master all of those, and they don't. They just have to master at least one successful lead gen lever.
Denny, I want to go back to what you said a second ago about harnessing the freedom. What did you mean by that, and how can agents practically apply that in their business starting today? Because I think that's such a valuable thing for us to talk about.
It's interesting you picked up on that. I've never really said that before. When I said it, I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. I should put that on my license plate. With most people, when they grow up in school, they when the bell rings, they change classes. Their paper's due on a such and such a time. They have a job at McDonald's, going through whatever. they're being told what to do. When they get into real estate, they have massive freedom. And they don't know how to manage that. And so, again, it's all taught in the 6 personal perspectives, and one of them is, or it actually in bold too, it's like, if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. Time blocking, 80-20, all of those principles, which Gary has written about, which is amazing. And they're really not taught. I went through my graduate degree. They're not even taught in business school. And so probably when you think about the 6 personal perspectives, the first one is commitment to self-mastery. I think that's where it begins. And I think that the common denominator, if I were like a coach on a particular agent, or I'm giving some advice to new agents out there, or maybe some agents that aren't up to speed yet, the number one thing you should master, attempt to master, is your time. Because I've made the mistake before. I can go home. I've gone home many nights, tuckered out. I didn't get anything important done.
Bent together. And I actually remember you asking everyone in the room, but it was like you were saying to me specifically, when you walk out of the house and you kiss your wife and kids, what comes out of your mouth? And we all said, I'm going to work. And you said, are you really? And that was years ago, Denny. And that has stuck with me. Oh, I think about that probably every week, at least one time when that occurs in my life, and I say to myself, okay, am I staying in integrity? That was one of your favorite words you just said, integrity, right? Am I staying in integrity? Am I actually going to work? Am I mastering my time such that when I say those words, it's true? And I think if we're all honest, like there's times when we don't. And if we're going to level up, if we're going to take that next step in our businesses, we have to commit to mastering time. So how does an agent start that journey?
Well, if Kristen were here, she'd tell the story about our good friend, Russell Shaw, about quitting smoking. You got to make the decision to do it. And it's a baby step thing. So anything you do starts with a baby step. Like, for example, every agent I'm talking to right now drives. You learn how to drive. Now, you start out small. Maybe when you're a little tyke, you're sitting on your mom or dad's lap and you've got the wheel doing this. You think you're driving, you're not really driving. You just think you are, right? Sooner or later, you get behind the car and it's clunky, particularly if you have a standard transmission. I had to learn in Ohio. They had hills. I had to shift gears on a hill. Did you ever have to do that? You probably don't have never had to drive a car with a standard transmission.
Oh,
that means you shift gears. Yeah. You have, and here's why. We went through the uncomfortableness of going and the awkwardness of learning how to drive because we didn't want our mom driving us on our first date, or we didn't want our mom driving us to our wedding. We wanted the freedom, right? And we went through the pain to get it. We've got to have that same desire. Are you willing to go through some being uncomfortable to make a change? Everything. That's what we ask in bold. What's stress? People think, oh, I'm all stressed out. No, stress is when you stress a muscle, you grow it. So make the decision, deal with the awkwardness or being uncomfortable. And then, agents, you drove somewhere today, probably with your knee, putting mascara on, texting your friend at the same time, and don't even remember driving. That's how lead generation, that's how your success can build. However, you've got to go through the awkwardness of it.
I've got a question, Denny. I feel like you are the master of analogies, and I'm wondering if this is something you've had your entire life or this is something you've developed over time, because some of the analogies that you use are they click in my brain as they're coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's like I do. I can probably, if you sense there's a delay in my response, I'm choosing which analogy to use. Yeah.
I think it's a cool lesson just for our listeners to pick up on and figure out how they can use some of these same type of concepts when they're helping people understand difficult concepts. And I love your analogy. So thank you.
Definitely. And just picking up on that. So you've done a lot of public speaking. You've talked about Bold. If people aren't familiar with Bold, that's an 8-week course that is, focused on a lot of these concepts that we're talking about. What do you see being, I just keep going back to this, like the challenge of the future for real estate agents and listening, like you've been talking about. Why are we so bad at listening?
Have we ever been taught to?
Yeah, not really. Not really.
Even that awkwardness of that pause as I ask a question. And what's interesting is we talk about there's no bad question, there's good questions and great questions. What's interesting is when you start asking great questions, you're going to hear that pause. And when you do, and I remember learning this from Tommy Hopkins, whenever you ask a question, or particularly a closing question, you shut up and let them think. And what's interesting is because there's a bold law out there, and this is very, very relevant right now in this COVID world, because there's a lot of uncertainty and fear. Fear is an emotion. And the bold law says what? Logic makes you think. Logic makes you think, emotion makes you act, right? Well, I learned during COVID, there's another side of that coin. Logic makes you think, fear makes you not act, meaning the action they're going to do is not to list, not to buy. And one of the ways that you can counteract that is instead of coming at them, telling them all this stuff, you start asking them questions, because when you ask them a question, particularly a great question, they have to process that. What happens is logic will spout up through the emotion. They'll speak it. It'll come into their ear, into their brain as logic. And sometimes that softens that emotion enough to think like, that makes no sense. Now you're getting somewhere with people. And what's beautiful about asking, having great conversations, and Gary teaches this, says it all the time. Don't be attached to the outcome. Your intention is to be in real estate for the rest of your life. So if they're going to be, everyone buys, it's a homeowner every 10 years. So if they're going to buy in 10 years, you don't care. You'll be in real estate as long as they buy from you. And when you have great conversations with people and quit sounding like a salesperson and start sounding like a human being that cares and has the answer, has the easy button, you'll build relationships in a database that will love you.
So you're really helping people self-discover through asking these questions. And Denny, I've heard you say before, a good question, you learn something, and a great question is when they learn something. And so that's kind of what you're really referring to, is they're thinking and processing through their own thoughts and emotions and speaking it out into existence, and then even processing their own thoughts and words as they're saying them, and helping them really self-discover not just how they feel, but what's causing them to feel that way and what the next best step is truly for them, regardless of the emotional impact.
Exactly. And when they listen to their inner voice, which they do listen to 100 times more than listening to our voice, change can happen.
So what you're saying and what I'm hearing is that silence is powerful. And we sometimes forget that as salespeople. And I think that confidence in what what you need to portray gives you the ability to stop and sit in that silence. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. The challenge is, and this is the trail you've been on, and I love what you're doing, is because we want to get agents from having their mom drive them to the prom to them driving their own car, right? And here is how this is my message in a nutshell. In fact, there's a bold law. There's a bold law that says keep your emotion between the lines, right? We've all heard this before. Probably since the beginning of my career, I remember I was always up early. I was the first one there. I didn't mind getting up early, and I get up crazy early right now. It's not even relevant. However, I start my day really early. And this is exactly what goes through my mind. This is my mindset. I'm a marcher. March, like soldiers march. I don't let my highs get high. I don't let my lows get low. I don't care if something good happens, something bad happens, whatever. There's been two times in my real estate career, I almost was ready to quit. However, luckily I stuck through it and kept going. And so does that make sense? I want you guys to hear me. Real estate, a path to mastering something is never a sprint. It's going to be a march. You're going to have good days, bad days, good seasons, bad seasons. Hey, Bucks won, right? However, they've had like 20 years of bad seasons in a row. So my advice to you is just get up and do the things you need to do each and every day. Keller Williams has come up with all kinds of different tools, a 66-day challenge, blah, blah, blah. The issue is have an accountability partner. That's why you want to have script partner. Do that. I would recommend you do your scripts every day for 66 days. That's called marching. That's called working through the process. So you can have what David just said is a confidence when somebody asks you a question. You can say, Now you already know what you're going to say. However, the pause is for them to pay attention to you and think, wow, they're thoughtful. Instead of just letting your mouth run 150 miles an hour. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And I feel like the title of this episode is going to be Shut Up. because really, I mean, all of us, we love the sound of our own voice. And one of the most powerful things you've said, in my estimation, is that when you actually have that silence, you have the power of that pause, your client, your prospect, you better know they're going to listen to themselves, their voice, 100 times more than they listen to your voice. And so why not give them the opportunity to hear that voice as many times through my presentation as possible? And in that sense, my presentation, my listing presentation really becomes their presentation. How they're hearing, how they're receiving.
That's put very well.
So, okay, we could go on for hours. This is the thing that I love about talking to you, Denny, is that we could take this. There's so many nuggets of truth and value in this, and yet I think we need to transition in the last segment of our show, which is 3, 2, 1, action. The same 3 questions we ask every single guest. Are you ready, sir, to be put on the hot seat?
It's just a Junction, Ellen, all those shows.
Sorry, your connection froze. We missed the analogy.
I bet it was hilarious, though.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, Denny, question number 1. Who is the one person who has had the biggest impact on your professional development, and why?
I don't like questions like this. All right. So may I pretend like I'm working with a seller right now?
Okay, sure. I don't really know what that means, but let's do it.
Well, this is what I teach. Okay, so that's an awesome question. So I can cover all your questions in my presentation. What else have you written down that I could cover? What's question 2?
Did you just hijack our podcast?
You just hijacked our podcast.
Kind of like how like you were saying, the presentation becomes theirs.
Exactly. Question number 2 is going to be, what's the most influential book in your life? So if you were going to pick an author, you might want to save that one. I see what you did there.
Well, I would think, okay, so I don't want to sound like I'm a company man or whatever. So I think probably, and I'll set the Bible aside because what's interesting, I said about the story of the Lord, it was a double meaning. I'm a man of faith, so I believe that a man's plans are in his mind, yet the Lord determines the steps. So, set the Bible aside for a moment, probably from the business standpoint. And again, I've been through a lot of training and business school, et cetera, and MBA. The most impactful thing to me that I could get my teeth into is probably Gary's The One Thing. I think that all those questions you ask me about how does one take control of their time in life, I think that book sums it up pretty well. And it's almost, when I travel a lot, I go through the airports, and my eyes automatically, almost every book stand has that right there. I would probably say that should be a must read in business.
So you answered number 2. So is it safe to say that number one is GK, or is there a different person who has had even more or different impact in your life and business?
Well, who's the question master now? Well, what's question 3?
Well, all right, we'll keep playing. So question 3, Denny, is always, because this is the All In podcast, we want to hear from you on what is the specific actionable item that our listeners can leave this call with today to begin to move the needle forward in their business.
Okay, and I'll go back to, generally speaking, and I'll answer number 1 before we go. I think the breakdown is this. I would ask people going into a bold room. There's 100 chairs there, and the average commission in the market is $7,500. And I said, if there was $7,500 taped under one of these chairs, who would walk into this room and turn over the chairs until they got the $7,500? All these hands go up, right? Now, I discovered that people would do it. They may not be afraid of the work. However, they're afraid of the rejection, which they perceive as rejection. Because if all 100 chairs had somebody sitting on it, and you had to go up and ask them, would you please stand up so I can look under your chair? Too many agents would be afraid to do it. I think that basically that fear is the same fear in the COVID market where people are afraid to put their house on the market when it's as clearly the GOAT market, greatest of all time, the greatest sellers market is since the history of man, and there's sellers out there afraid. You guys, just trust the process. Trust the process. Gary talks about dominoes, and this is my last story, then I'll answer question 1. I think the smallest domino in the world is a mustard seed, which basically goes back, if you have faith as a mustard seed, meaning if you just put in this effort, something 1.5 times that will happen, and momentum will happen. You've got to have enough faith in yourself to go. The faith has to be at least as big as a mustard seed, because your fear is that big. You're going to have to get over it. No shortcut. And so probably that was what I'd say, is just go out and do something. Start talking to people till it becomes natural. That's all you have to do. And going back to question number 1 really fast. Probably I'm going to go, and again, it would be easy to say Gary Keller. I think probably the guy that inspired me early on was probably 2 people. One would be Tommy Hopkins, and the other was Zig Ziglar. They were my mentors in my early sales career. My family called me Little Zig, because I just, his corny stories and his Southern accent, and I stalked him. I was with him. We went to the house next to him to look over into his pool with his, seat at the top arrow. Eventually had the opportunity to have dinner with him. So I would say Tommy Hopkins is Zig Ziglar.
That's awesome. And that's the first time in the history of our podcast that we've done 2, 3, 1 action. But it was worth it. It was worth it. Denny, this has been great. Where can our listeners find more of your content and connect with you?
Yeah, I don't know if I got this exactly right, because they just changed it. I know that Denny Grimes Mastermind on Facebook, or you go to YouTube, it's Denny Grimes Mastery, I believe is what it is. And I just have, that's my passion right now. I'm developing a new teaching series in the mastery of real estate. I've got some great concepts, and if that doesn't work, you can go to my email at coachdennygrimes@gmail.com. I know that works. coachdennygrimes@gmail.com. This has been a lot of fun, and you guys are awesome. Thanks for letting me be a part of your show.
Oh, we appreciate you investing some time with us and into our listeners. I know people are going to grow their business as a result of this. We'll make sure that everything's linked up in the show notes. Guys, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of the All In Podcast. Joe, is there anything else you want to take us out today?
Well, Denny, I'll just finish. I'll take us out by saying thank you again for your time. I appreciate your insights and knowledge. Every time I talk to you, no matter how often it is, I learn something new, I write something down, and I put something into action. So thank you. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing what your business looks like here in the next couple of years.
Ditto that. Thank you, guys.
Well, guys, that's a wrap. As always, go
play all in. Is that what you were looking for me to do?
That's what I was looking for. All right, go play all in, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In Podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play all in.